So here is another interview question. How do you remove particular values from a data frame in R? When I mean particular values, say your data frame has a wrong value somewhere in some other cells of the data frame. How do you remove it? Let me explain what I mean by that. Say we have a data frame like this. So here is our first column, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. Now this kind of scenario is more relevant when you deal with data that comes from IoT scenarios like sensors, temperature sensors, pressure sensors, or any kind of machine related sensors. When they keep pumping the data, sometimes they malfunction. Example, let's say this is data that started at, let's say, 10 o'clock, 10 hours, 00 minutes, 00 seconds, and then say these are all temperature sensors. The first sensor is here. The temperature is 97 degree F. This temperature sensor 2 says it's 98 degrees F. And this one says it's 96, 97.5, so on and so forth. See, these are all temperatures measured by different sensors in the city of Chicago. So sensor 1, sensor 2, sensor T3, sensor 4. And they keep streaming this temperature data. Let's say they keep streaming data once every second. So the first row is 10 o'clock, 00 seconds. The second row is 10 o'clock, 01 seconds. And then you got a 97.5, 98.5, 97.5, 96, right? And then it goes on and on and on. 1003, 1004, on and on and on. But like I said, sometimes these sensors malfunction. It's a mechanical error. So let's say over here, it has malfunctioned and the value is minus 100 or minus 1000. So typically when these sensors malfunction, they send out a weird data, meaning uh, something that's highly improbable. So there is no minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the city of Chicago, right? Or minus 1000. If minus 100 is possible, it sends out a number that does not make sense because it can only send out numbers, let's say. That's a restriction. So there's a minus 100 there, and let's say there's a minus 100 here, right? So at 1003, this sensor has malfunction, and at 1004, sensor 4 has malfunction. And the rest of the time, everything is okay. So there's temperature values here, 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 so on and so forth. So what we want to find out are all the instances or all the cells in this data frame where there is a minus 100, meaning all the instances where the sensors have malfunction, and just replace them with NA. Same thing here, NA. It sounds simple, right? So how do you go about doing this? The syntax is really simple. It's not all that complicated, but I just want you to understand step by step how we are achieving that. So that way you won't be scared when you look at that 3 or 4 line syntax. Also along the way, we're going to learn some things. So let's take some data, right? So there's sensor 1 data, sensor 2 data, and then data from 5 sensors. Let's copy that and put that into our studio. We don't want these prompts. Let's get rid of them. And over here, we see a minus 100, right? That's the only value in sensor 5 that's wrong and that we want to eliminate and replace with NA. Everything else, let's say, is fine, right? So let's just select all of that and hit run. Okay, so our sensor data is ready. The next thing is we got to create a data frame out of that. Copy. And so temperature in a week is created as a data frame from these 5 sensors. Sensor 1 becomes the first column, sensor 2 becomes the second column, third, fourth, fifth, right? Select that, click run. Now, let's see what's there in temperature underscore week. Edit, temp underscore week. Let's run it. So what do we have here? So S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, all those vectors became columns in this data frame, and the third element in this vector became the third row, and that particular column is minus 100, and we want to replace that with NA. Well, you might just say, well, it's just one value, right? Why don't you just say temp underscore week, which is the data frame of, this is the third row, right? So third row, comma, fifth column equal to NA. That makes things simple, right? Well, it does if you know that that's the only value. But that's not the case, right? In our case, we are getting data from 5 sensors in Chicago and every second. So that's going to be like so many different rows. And these sensors could be malfunctioning at any given point in time. So you don't know which of these rows or columns or cells of the data frame are malfunctioning, and they have this minus 100. So you got to go through all of them, figure out where there is a minus 100, and then replace that with NA. And it's not as difficult as you think. So we're going to go through it step by step. Let's close that. And we're going to solve this in 4 steps. Okay. So step number 1 is to figure out which of the values in a particular column of a data frame have a minus 100 in them. The way to do that is by just saying that particular column double equals minus 100, like so. So what we are trying to say is, among all these values, which of them equals minus 100? So is this equals minus 100? No. Is this? No. Right? This? Yes. And all the rest of them are no as well, right? So this would be a false because it's not equal to minus 100, and false. And this would be a true, and false, 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 right? That's what we're trying to figure out. Okay, step number 1, select that and hit run. Okay, so we got that false, right? This is not minus 100. False, this is not minus 100. True, this is minus 100, and the rest of them are false as well. The first step is to figure out, given a column of a data frame, which of these cells in that or values in that column correspond to a given number or value. So once we get that, the second step is to pass that true false vector to the corresponding column in the data frame, and then you get exactly the particular cell or value in that vector that gives you a value of minus 100. So let's do this. So you just pick this up, Control C, and go here and go there, select all of that and click run. So what are we trying to do here now? So this over here essentially gives you a false, false, true, false, false, false vector. And when you pass a Boolean vector to the columns of a data frame, only the indices that corresponds to a true will be returned. In this case, it's only true in this particular case where it's minus 100. So only this particular value is returned. Easy, right? Now, if you're confused at this point, don't worry. The next two steps is going to complete the loop for us here. So, step number 3 is, well, what do you want to do once we identify that it's a minus 100 or this wrong value? We're going to replace with NA, right? So, in this column, we know that the third element is a minus 100. And then just equate that to NA, and that's it. That particular column is fixed. Okay, so go here, hit enter, run. We're done here. Now, if you go to temp underscore week, run this, you see that what was once minus 100 in column 5 of this data frame is now replaced with NA. So that is step number 3. Now, when we started the problem, we said that any of these values could be a minus 100. There could be a minus 100 here. There could be a minus 100 here. Here. It's not just enough that we fix one particular column, right? We have to fix all the columns. So essentially, so far in steps 1, 2, and 3, we know how to fix the values on any one particular column. Now, all we have to do is loop through all the columns starting here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then just repeat the steps 1, 2, and 3, right? So whatever we have done here, this is step number 3, right? So this was step number 1, 2, 3, and step number 4 is to just repeat this operation over all the columns. That's it. How do you do that? Now, there are a couple of ways to do it. If you come from a traditional programming background, a for loop is probably something you'll be familiar with. So let's do a for loop. Here we go. That's the for loop. Step number 3 is done, and repeat step 3 across all columns. That's what we're trying to do here. Okay, so for I in names of temp underscore week, so temp underscore week is this particular data frame, and names of temp underscore week will be S1, S2, S3, S4, S5. So for all these names, right, just substitute this with I. You see that? All we have to do is loop it through all the columns, right? Let's see if that works. So select all of that and click run. You get an error there, right? Now this error is a bit cryptic. What it's trying to say is the way you're referencing the elements in the data frame is wrong. And why is that? Now, how do you reference the elements or columns of a data frame? You say temp underscore week dollar the column name. So data frame dollar column name. Now that works if it is not a string literal, meaning over here what's happening is you're trying to substitute I with S5. Now that's not going to work because the dollar symbol that's used to isolate a particular column of a data frame is more or less like a shortcut. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now you have this temp underscore week, right? If you want to reference this column, you say temp underscore week dollar S1. That refers to this entire column. Now this dollar is like a shortcut. And if S1 is substituted as a string, in the case of loops or some kind of an operation like a string append, it does not work. So in cases like that, you got to go to the original root, which is, remember, a data frame is another variation. Remember, a data frame is a variation of a list. It's almost like a list, except that list can be of heterogeneous column length, and a data frame is almost like a homogeneous column length. That's the main difference apart from some other differences. So temp underscore week of, you have to go for the double square brackets notation. So over here, if you specify s1 as even as a string literal, it can be substituted in a loop, or any kind of programming variation can be done there. If you follow this way of addressing a particular column, you're going to get it right. So instead of I and with a dollar, all we're going to do is do that and I and do that. That's going to refer to whatever I is going to say in that loop. For example, the names of temp underscore week. So these are S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, right? So in the first iteration, I is going to be replaced with S1. So when you say temp underscore week of S1, it's going to pull the first column. And then you're going to run this logic that we have figured out in step number 3. And the same thing here. Instead of a $I, we're going to say bracket bracket I. Let's try that. So instead of this dollar notation, we just got to use the double bracket notation. Okay. There we go. And then select all of that and click run. So that has worked. Now let's see what temp underscore week is. Temp underscore week, and then you got an NA there, right? So that NA was repeated. Let's just pump in some more NAs. Say there is a minus 100 here, minus 100, and minus 100 here, right? So, and then run that, and now create this data frame, and just let's see what the data frame looks like. So there's a minus 100 here and the minus 100 here. So there are 3 minus 100s, wrong values, that needs to be replaced with NAs. And we have picked these wrong values at random. So the for loop is going to go through all the columns, one column at a time, and then run the logic that we have figured out in step number 3, to replace the values with an NA. So let's do that. Select that, click run, and what is temp underscore week? 1. You see that? NA, NA, NA. All the random errors that we have introduced are being replaced with NA.